of interest. Oh, thank you, Kamna. We're now recording. So we were just so we were just saying hello, welcome to everybody. We've been doing Stephen and I have been teaching certifications in generative coaching for 15 years. We now have a group of trainers, 8 of whom will be giving our next virtual program, which we're very excited about. We want to share a little bit about that with you and what the program is about.
Yeah, we said 15 years, but
Yeah,
I mentioned in passing that it's kind of unbelievable to hear myself say, but Robert and I have known each other for 50 years.
Yeah.
And we were part of the initial Bandler Grinder community, and we kind of went our own ways, and then we started intersecting our paths.
Actually, we reconnected like 30 years ago in 1994 when our daughter was.
That's right. Our kids were. My daughter was 3, and she's now 33. So
yeah, and same with mine.
Yeah. So Robert and I started integrating and having these conversations about his sort of views on really creativity is our common theme.
Yeah.
And mine, and this evolved into different programs. And then the generative coaching is sort of the culmination of that multiple year interaction and collaboration between us. So the program that we're doing, we think what's really special is it gives this certification, this 15-day, 16-day process that teaches you this method of creativity. It's very, very practical. But as Robert was saying, we're in this new phase of the creative development of generative coaching, where these people who have trained with us, studied with us for most of them for decades,
yes,
are now in a position of doing training. And one of the great things about it is that each of them has their own unique way, and each of them is able to express it, to communicate it in so many different ways, such that your experience of generative coaching from this multi-trainer thing, I think, will be a next generation.
Yeah.
That's what our intention is.
I think it'll be very rich. I mean, so Stephen and I, I think part of the sort of the impact of our own training together is we have these different styles, and yet what we're working with is the same deeper structures, and this notion that we are all born creative. In our program, we're not teaching how to be creative. We're saying you already are creative. What we're doing is showing how to coach so that you release that at the time that it's most needed. Because what often happens is that even though we have these natural abilities to be creative, we don't use them in the key times. In fact, we kind of tend to go to the opposite area. When we most need to be creative because it's challenging, we sometimes just go back to what we already know. And so that's a big part of why the coaching is important.
Or you could say, well, how does that happen practically? What Robert's saying, the places where we most need to be creative, often we're the least creative.
Right.
And partly because we say that when we go into these challenging circumstances, the stress of those challenging circumstances, we automatically constrict our consciousness. And that constriction, that disconnection, that isolation is really the defining criteria of a lack of creativity, or what I would say is a negative creative state.
Yeah.
So conversely, creativity, the realization of creativity is really an expression of interconnectedness. So generative coaching is not the brilliance of Robert or the brilliance of Steve, or now the brilliance of 10 individual trainers. It's really the network, the conversational, the matrix of all these different parts of the system in harmony together.
And the diversity is important. And so, by the way, then speaking of our trainers, we want to just give them an opportunity just right up front here. You'll get a chance to hear some more from them later. But we want them to introduce themselves. We'd like to start with Dr. Till,
who's got to leave soon. And by the way, I just want to say in introducing that, I just arrived in Paris a couple hours ago. We're at Robert's house. And I've arrived here from London where I was teaching because we're here to support the generative coaching certification that Natalie here, Natalie, you can wave your hand, who and Layla have been doing in French for the past 6 months. And now we're in the last module of that. And Natalie and Layla invited us in. So it's already happening in multiple languages and in multiple ways. So with that, let's turn it over to Till because Till has to run out the door.
And for all of you, just I think this would just be a kind of a brief initial introduction, who you are, where you're from, and what is kind of what you consider to be your special contribution.
So take it away,
Till. Robert and Steve. I'm happy to pick it up here. And I tried to change my name, but changing names it wasn't possible. So it's how you sign up in Zoom. So the doctor that I bring is a doctor in physics. So I'm both a physicist and a martial artist practicing in the art of Aikido. So I'm both bringing the scientific perspective and the perspective from a embodiment point of view. You know that Aikido was one of the sources that inspired the work of both of these guys we see so nicely together in the image. And I'm mainly working in business coaching fields. So I'll bring, I'd say, the business coaching perspective. And I'm located in Mainz in Germany. And I'll hand it over, I guess, to Natalie.
Thank you, Till. So I'm very glad to be here, and thank you everybody again to be here and to attend this conference. So I'm Nathalie Lebas. I'm from France. You can hear with my accent.
Very lovely, by the way.
Yeah,
very thin French accent.
Yeah, so I've been involved for 12 years. I can say I did my first generative coaching in 2012. I'm the manager of a generative change company now, working in the world of business and in the world of personal development, and especially in dance. So I have developed a method of somatic dance. I'm working with professional dancers, choreographers, and teachers mainly. And this was my main experience. But what I could add is that generative coaching has changed my way of training, my way of coaching, and my way of being. So it was a big transformation. So I hope you can join us for this generative coaching online.
Thanks. Yeah. Let's go over to Haya.
And then how about Haya next?
Hi, everybody. My name is Haya. I'm Jordanian, half Palestinian, half West African. My background is science, like Till, but I'm not a doctor. My major is biological sciences, and I've been working in business for 20-something years in human resources. I've been studying with Steve since 2019, and I'm an NLP practitioner, and that's how I went into this world. Generative coaching has changed my life practically, and it helped me to connect on so many levels, and it just basically shifted my life, my view of everything else. So happy to be among the trainers with these two great guys, and so humbled at the same time. Looking forward to everybody to join, and I'll pass it on to, let me see.
I guess you kind of have to pass it back to us.
Kamna, do you want to introduce yourself?
So Kamna is our kind of the one that's organized this. Kamna is basically the general manager of the International Association for Generative Change, which is going to be one of the certifying bodies here. We'll say a little bit more about that in just a moment. Yeah, Kamna has also been with us for a long time and is kind of the thread that holds all of this together. So Kamna.
Hi, it's my pleasure to be here. I joined, I think, 3 years ago. I attended the NLP first and met Robert there, and he said, come to generative coaching. And I am so happy that I listened to him. And it really is, like everybody is saying, completely transformational. It teaches you generativity, which actually means holding different spaces within you and around you in a gentle and kind way and let them flow through your life. It gives you so much flow, so much, I think it's power. It gives you so much capacity to deal with situations. I have been a physicist and I wouldn't believe in this. Like till I was a physicist in my, call it past life. And join us. It's a beautiful community. You will not regret it. It's generative, it's creative, and it's very, very caring. So we won't let you down. So come and join us. And at the end, if you write to me, we are happy to give you some extra discounts for just being here today. I was told that's a marketing tool, and I'm going to use it. So
It's a generative thing. Um, yeah, so
thank you.
maybe thank you so much, Kamna. We'll be turning it back over to Kamna at the end as well. But let's kind of say, well, okay, so what is this thing that we're talking about? We're saying it's so great. Let's give you a little bit of an overview of this. We have Stephen and I have a couple of slides here. So we get it started here.
I use this to say goodbye because I got to run and teach.
Okay, Tel.
Okay, Tel.
Bye. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow down
Yeah.
here in Paris.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
So the one thing we do want to also mention, just with this slide, you see a couple of us, and there's also Eva Viepricht, who was unable to join us because she got caught in traffic.
German traffic jam.
But you will also see that Kamna has gone through the very intense work of getting ICF, continuing education certification credits. So that is also something that is a benefit of being in the program.
And incidentally, there are 4 additional trainers who couldn't make it tonight. So it's a team of 10 of us altogether.
And one of the things is that there's 4 modules. Each of the modules has the co-trainers. So you're getting that because, we kind of like to say generative coaching wasn't really developed as a solo. It was actually developed as a duet, and at least to be teaching it. And so we have these 4 duets who will be teaching and providing these kind of what we call these generative complementary perspectives.
If you look at if we're taking this core theme of creativity as the foundation from which everything else arises, if you look at all these ideas and models of creativity over the last 100 years, probably the common theme, the shared theme of all of them is creativity arises from the tension of opposites. It's not something that comes from a single position or a single source. It's, as Robert says, is a conversation. And probably the most meaningful, the first division of the whole is into opposites. Unfortunately, our ego mind, which is really from a neuroscience point of view, a very secondary type of mind that we're addicted to, doesn't see things in terms of relationships or opposites. It's looking for the right answer, the truth, the one way to find something. And we see that creates a lot of problems. So we're looking in all phases of generative coaching of this movement between the wholeness of something, the parts of something, the intention towards something, the obstacle that invariably comes up. And so that's organized now around these kind of 4 premises.
And you kind of see, by the way, the image on this slide is that of a tree in all 4 seasons. Because we're also looking at that wholeness and saying that, we're not rigid in time, that we are actually multifaceted beings. And again, what this idea of coaching, all coaching is about helping somebody go from some present state to some desired state. In generative coaching, the significant thing is that desired state is not something that they have ever done before. A lot of coaching is organized around helping you to just improve with something that you're already doing. You're getting a goal faster or better. In generative coaching, we're saying there's so many situations, more and more, in fact, in our lives, that we cannot do what we've done before. And in fact, when we try to do it, and we see this in individual lives, in organizations, in nations, when you try to go back and do things the way you did before, it doesn't work. And in fact, it makes it worse. And so a big part of what we're doing in generative coaching is we got to say, we got to help to create this path. The idea of a coach, you see, the original meaning was it's a vehicle that's taking you from some present state to desired state. And we say that that vehicle is actually the generative relationship.
So again, if we continue with this underlying theme of the tension of opposites, traditional coaching would often focus on the goal, the desired state. But we say you also have to focus on the present state
and the obstacles.
And so we're always trying to like surf a middle way. I live in a beach town in Southern California, but we're trying to find a middle way between opposites. So with the goal, you're talking about going beyond, or the intention going beyond where you are. But to do that, you have to start with where you are. And so if you're unable to make any movement, we stop trying to change and we go to this opposite of the generative nature of not change, what the Chinese call wu wei.
And I mean, this whole idea that the obstacles are a key part, that the whole notion is we're not trying to get rid of, destroy, bypass the obstacles. I think there's an old Zen saying, which is that the obstacles are not in the way, they are the way, they are part of the way. That so this notion, we take this notion, we call it sort of the principle of Aikido, where we're saying that the obstacle actually is a key part of the journey. It actually can be transformed into a resource.
So when we talk in the coaching sessions with a person about what do you want, what's your intention, we find that in the majority of cases, within a very brief time, maybe 10 seconds, it activates the opposite. It activates the obstacle. I want to go in this direction, but as I begin to even think that, something inside of me shuts down or something inside of me blocks it. So rather than thinking of removing or overcoming, we're seeing in that blocking, that obstacle, that those are the seeds of the deeper, fuller, more creative, rich goal that we need to include. So we're sort of thinking about a generative, sustainable intention as always moving between I want to get there, I have to stay here. I want to work hard, I need to rest. And so when we're in an ego state or non-generative state, those opposites are usually canceling each other out. So we're looking to create what we call a coach state or coach field that can be able to move between these opposites as sort of the essence of the creative juices.
So you see here, we've already published 3 volumes of generative coaching. These are the kind of things we will be going over, and they're sort of the roadmap for also the different modules. And as you see here, the work that we're doing is on, again, creating something, creating a successful work life, a personal life, or personal relationships, creating a good relationship with yourself, your health, your body, or your emotions. And we have, we kind of have already started with saying there's a few key things here that are the principles that we've been mentioning, this notion of a generative state. And a generative state is what determines how we perceive, the reality, and how we create the reality around us.
So, again, examples of a generative state where I settle down, I open up, go to this peripheral. And to then make it generative, I add the opposite, which I get this sort of coherent laser beam intention. So that focus on the intention while resting in this peripheral field, 1 + 1 = 3.
Or more. And again, this notion of a generative, so there's a generative state and then a generative relationship. And that's big part of what generative coaching is about. We say, and I think this is really important to state up front, we will be going over what we call prototypes, which are their sets of steps by which you can accomplish various things. We call them a prototype, though, because the real magic of these and the power of these is not in the step. It's in the quality of the generative relationship, the relationship between coach, client, and also sort of the bigger bigger systems that they're a part of.
And if I might point out again, you will hear this tension of the opposites. On the one hand, we're trying to just let things happen, kind of open to whatever shows up and try to make creative use of that. But to have that fluidity, we also need a discipline. And so in the generative coaching, it's sort of organized around this discipline of this coherent set of 6 steps by which we navigate the sustainable unfolding of something positive.
And you kind of see in the image here, the image on the slide is of a prism where you're putting in white light, which is what we would call this sense of this, all this, a field of possibilities that the prism, which we would say is our filters, then is able to sort of break down into actual, actions, steps, the things that are necessary to create some actual future.
In that generative model, what is the white light?
It's what we call the field. So, which is another really key part of generative change.
And so you see, of course, that sort of basic model of how coherent light diffracts when it hits something into all the multiple colors. Robert's saying those are the filters, those are the nervous system. So when this white light of spirit consciousness, you can use many other terms, is that as it comes through these filters, as it comes through the Steve filter, it will generate a unique reality. As it comes through the Robert filter, another reality. As it comes through a tree, another reality. As it comes through my granddaughter, another reality. Creativity is being able to hold all those different frequencies into some coherent emergent property.
And to then, as we said, and to be able to direct them towards something, like towards health, towards my intimate relationship, towards my work life. And part of the way we do that is using multiple intelligences. So another really key aspect of generative coaching that I think sets it apart from pretty much most other coaching models is that it's not simply verbally oriented. We're using, as Natalie was talking about, somatic expression. We use visual intelligence, metaphorical intelligence, emotional intelligences, and also what we call aesthetic intelligence, which is really important because when we talk about working with these opposites and complements, what makes a problem is when you get too much of something or too little of something else. So the aesthetic intelligence is about creating harmonious interconnections.
Basic examples of this, I think when we look at any uniquely human form or any aesthetically fulfilling form, these are all examples of that. So a group of musicians who are going to play quote unquote music. And music is not just one note or one musician. It's all these different channels that are finding some sort of aesthetic resonance. A sports team, a business team, a professional, an intimate relationship. It's always about multiple contradictory patterns that you're looking to organize into a larger whole.
And again, what we consider to be what creates so-called negative influences, obstacles, interferences, is not something that is inherently negative. It means aesthetically speaking, it has not found its fit or its balance within that. So this is this idea that our mutual, one of our mutual mentors, Milton Erickson, who was an amazing hypnotherapist, psychotherapist, he used to say the symptom is the solution. The symptom is telling you what is out of balance, what is out of harmony. Rather than get rid of it, you actually need to listen to it and leverage it. And that's why we use this metaphor of Aikido. You're joining it and then redirecting.
So just as an example of that practical example, say somebody comes in and we say, well, what do you want? This is kind of a core question of any coaching.
Right.
What's your goal? What's your intention?
And what in ours, the question is always, what do you want to create or create more?
So say somebody says, well, I really, really need to complete this project and get this work out. It's really important to me. So we say, okay, that's great. We'd like to support that. So why don't you do it? because when I go to do it, I end up procrastinating. And so you see those differences, and they're regarded and presented as if one's the positive side that should be propped up, and the other is the negative side that should be removed. And we're saying it's the clash between those two states that produces the stuckness, the fragmentation of the system. So what we're looking to do in generative coaching is first open this space of mind-body fluid-centered relaxation, and then be able to invite the one side of the conflict, I want to achieve something, and then say, oh, and when you do, this other side comes up. You're calling it procrastination.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can just let go of the verbal labels and go into the body and have you express it a little bit, and express it in a centered, positive way, and see what is it called now? Oh, it's called relaxation. And so now you have, oh, when I go to achieve, this part of me that needs to relax and do nothing also shows up. So the generative understanding is that sustainable creativity comes from being able to not only hold, but to have those two make love, not war, because that's where all of us come from, right?
And
So we got a mommy energy, daddy energy.
well, I was just going to say that I think a good analogy or a good symbol of this is that, the yin yang symbol, where you see, okay, these two things, the yin and the yang they could be opposites and in conflict, but in there, they're in harmony and they're in balance.
So in that model, are you the yin or the yang?
I'm the yin yang, the gang,
You were the yin
the
yang.
nga,
Right.
the nya.
So anyway,
And then the last kind of thing here that's also as important is our emphasis on practices, because we say generative coaching, you're dealing with creativity, but you've got to make it practical, and to make something practical comes from practice. That is putting it into action, not just once in a coaching session, but in an iterative way that deepens, enriches, and sustains it.
so if we could put those together do you have this? Yeah, great. Into what is the prototype for all the work, and the prototype for the 15, 16-day training. It's the 6-step model. So we're talking about these sort of more open, fluid principles, but then we need to structure them in a way so that we can take whatever a person is bringing in or wants to work with, and be able to organize them in some coherent, sequential way.
And I want to, by the way, as we just look at this, I do want to acknowledge you saw the book covers, and some of the graphics here were done by Antonio Mezza, who has been our amazing illustrator. It shows his visual superpower, as it were.
So we speak it, and Antonio draws it.
Yeah.
So the first step, which is we consider in many ways a meta step, it's the most important, is we get out of the head, we get out of thinking in terms of fragments, and we come back to a more basic state of presence where everything feels like an integrated whole. Now you might think, well, that's so California, so esoteric. But we all have these experiences. So we ask practically, where have you felt a connection to yourself and to life that was without tension or problem? Or when you need to return to yourself, you've been working 40 days and 40 nights, and you think, oh, I need to get back to myself. What do you do? And people might say, oh, I go for a walk.
I garden, I cook, I play music.
I play with my granddaughter, I read. And
I do something athletic.
And I think we would all recognize, even if none of us probably do all of those things, but we would say, oh yeah, I can, it makes sense, because I can see how when that person goes for a walk, or when that person meditates, or when that person does their reading, they would get out of their worry mind and get back to this deeper resonance with a more creative field. most of the time we think, oh, I can only do that in my special state. I can only do it when I'm on holiday. I can only do it if there's not people within 100-mile radius. Okay? But we're saying that's the starting point for any sustainable creativity. So we're looking to identify and then practically activate that state and use it as the underlying base for all the rest of the work.
And as you can see on the slide, what we're calling the coach state is an acronym for a set of qualities that we learn and practice. That is what we call the coach state and the coach field. The state of centeredness, openness we've mentioned, being attentive, alert, connected to all of the different, as we were talking about, these different intelligences, these different parts of ourself, so that we can kind of hold them all together in this place of unity and harmony. And generally, we say that the opposite of that, which is where it's the non-generative state, it's the problem creating state, is what we call crash state, which is another acronym for being contracted, reactive, kind of caught up in the head in analysis paralysis, separated from, like Steve was talking about, our kind of ego cognitive mind tends to want to break things down, separate them. And that tends to create a kind of a hostility rather than a hospitality. And so that state is very important. And then from there, we are setting what we call setting an intention. So now I'm open this channel in this coach state. Where do I want to take it?
And we see in that or not on this slide, but what Robert was saying, what we would consider, quote, a well-formed intention, and one that we're using generative coaching to make sure is there before a person tries to act on it. You have to say it verbally. You have to envision it visually. It has to be a vision, a dream, and you have to embody it fully somatically. And if you're missing one of those, probably when you start to walk on your intention path, it won't be sustainable. You get knocked off and you won't be able to come back.
And in addition to this, then, to get to the generative state, once we have this intention and we're connected to ourself, there is this connection to the white light we were showing coming into the prism, which we call a field of resources. And field, Kamna and Till were talking about their background in physics. I actually also studied physics in the university. And, core concept in all of physics is field. You can't see it, but it's the thing that actually is the thing that's responsible for, light as a field we can see because there's a field, gravity is a field, and even sound is waves in a field of particles.
So to ground in that field, to get anchors in the field, this third step focuses on, okay, I'm in this open field where like an ocean of consciousness, and the counterpoint is I have a positive intention. I have this feeling of a grounding in a somatic center, and I have this opening to all these positive resources. And we emphasize that voice inside of you that says you're not enough. It speaks the voice of wisdom. So Robert's going to do something as brilliant as Robert is. If he has a significant challenge, if he tries to do it in isolation with just Robert, he's probably going to fail. So for Robert to achieve that goal, he would be needing to think, what else do I need to have a full sort of generative field for myself? Who are my resources? Who are my representatives? I need courage. Who would be a representative of that? I need relaxation when things get stressful. How do I find that? Where are the resources that I can bring in so that your generative self is never just Robert or Steve, never just ego isolation, but it's a field. And that's what we worked on in this third step.
And this field, we're saying there can be tangible things in that field, but as we said, a field is invisible. It can be ancestors. It can be, archetypal characters. It can be nature. I mean, there's many, many things that are in that field, and that's a big, I think, a big key part of generative change. And then now, once we have that, we can start to, take action And because, okay, I've got this thing that has never existed before that I want to create, or at least it hasn't existed for me or existed in this way or in this context. So how do I get there? I go into this generative state. I like to sort of use this analogy that if I have a bow and arrow, when I point the bow at the target, that's like my intention. When I pull the string back towards my center, that's kind of centering, which is creating now this dynamic energy and tension. And then I've got the field is the wind, everything that's there with me, with the air that's going to carry that, my teammates, etc. And then you see here the kind of this example of beginning to build, this what we'll sometimes call a storyboard, working with a timeline. And when we do that,
or often before we
even
do that,
before, we inevitably begin to meet the obstacles, the challenges, the little voices that say you can't, the big voices that say you can't, the outer obstacles, the inner obstacles.
And we really, one of the core, probably distinctive parts, certainly within a coaching realm or even a therapy realm, is we have this positive attitude towards obstacles and problems.
Yeah.
And we say that we wouldn't be having these conversations were it not for significant obstacles. Somebody says, well, here's what I want to do. If that's all there is, there's no need for coaching or therapy or whatever. The need for that coaching comes from, I want to do it, I try to do it, but something stops me or something blocks me or something diverts me. That's what we mean by an obstacle. So we're asking, what is the nature of those obstacles? Why are they following you everywhere you go? And more importantly, what would be the most helpful relationship that we could take with it so that they can be contributors, integral parts of a sustainable creative solution?
And sort of the implication of the drawing here is, there's the dragon, it's the obstacle. If I treat it as a problem, if I treat it as an enemy, it is an enemy. If I treat it as a friend, if I treat it as a possible advisor, if I treat it as a possible resource, it will become that resource. So it's our relationship with it. And that's I think one of the most profound things of generative coaching. And it's not easy. And it's why you need a coach and you need that generative state. And it's also why you need practices. So practices that help us to continue to have the mastery and the flexibility that's going to be necessary to actually create that intention, that desired state.
So, we all, I think we want to appreciate that life is very, very hard in some ways. It's really hard being a human being. And these days, it's especially hard. And so we want to appreciate that no matter how much coaching we get, no matter how much positivity there is in our life, that the difficulties, the adversarial stuff, the stuff that knocks us down, the stuff that discourages us, it's always going to be there every day. And once we just let that be, then we can open, I think, a more practical question. What is our creative relationship with it? What can be our creative relationship with it? And whatever answer we come up with, we have to appreciate that the practical application of it, the practical success of it, only comes from daily practice. You can't do it as an intellectual solution.
It's kind of like trying to learn to drive a car or ride a bicycle,
Yeah.
just by trying it once and thinking about it.
So when you get knocked down, and we just assume, I mean, in the practice of Aikido, we're practicing how when you lose your center, when you get pushed off, you don't shut down and try to hold it. You give it up, you roll into a circle, into a roll, and you bring that energy into it so that when you come back up, you're stronger and more present with it. That's, of course, what we mean by resilience. But resilience requires daily practice.
So those are we're kind of a review of the success. We're going to ask Natalie and Haya, as you anything as you think of those 6 steps, anything that you think would be particularly important that you would like to emphasize or add, maybe starting with you, Natalie?
Yeah, you said a lot of things, and it's really nice to have both of you again speaking about the topic. So thank you. Well, what I can just add is about my experience. Coach state what is really very important, and it changes everything. And compared to traditional coaching, it's totally different because you work with yourself first to have a human presence with your client, and you learn your client how to have access to that. So that's very important for me. And the main thing is using multiple intelligences, especially I was speaking about somatic mind, but I think that this is really the main point, being to get rid of our cognitive mind, because we are mainly connected to that. In the business world, as an example, there is a lot of pressure in the world where we live. We are already being driven by this, and you learn how to express yourself through your intention, through your somatic mind, and this is really crucial in the work. And the main thing I could add is about transforming obstacles. You were saying, Robert, the problem is the solution, the symptom is the solution, and thanks to Milton Erickson for that. But being able to welcome your shadows and not only your light, it is also very important into the work, because it helps you to transform that and to be able to go through and to take action and to realize, to take your dream to a realization. And that is really nice, in a nice way you can do it. And practice the 6 steps, about practice, because Steve is always saying during the work, you begin after the session, the work is beginning just after the session, but that's it. You need to practice every day to have your deep coach day, to have access to remind yourself about your intention, to have access to all resources that you need to take action and to transform obstacles. So it is a daily practice. So you
Thanks, Natalie.
everything, and the 6 steps are really a huge model, a beautiful model to go through all our obstacles we have, in internal obstacles and outer obstacles. So
And we talk about them as the 6 steps, and it's almost unavoidable that in sort of a basic level understanding, we think of them almost like 6
linearly separate things.
But we also, as we go on in the training, each module, each of the 4 modules works with the 6 steps in a first generation, a second generation, and we begin to see that these 6 steps are really the 6 necessary conditions for positive, sustainable change. And so it's not that we have to start with step 1, 2, is that as we move through the flow of any creative process, we'll see an imbalance or something is happening that we realize one of those steps is not being realized, and we bring that in.
And I think the other thing I would say is that those steps, each step can be done many different ways.
Many different
so it's on the one hand, you can say, it's simple, there's just 6 steps, but each step has multiple ways of doing it, which is all about adapting to the uniqueness of each individual, of having many possible ways to do it. And that's how you actually master it. And mastery is not having one way. Mastery is having multiple ways, and obviously creative ways. So, and I just also like what you were saying, Natalie, about, if you try to block the shadow, you just make it darker. So that's not going to integrate it. So let's go on. Haya, I'm curious, what would you add here to this conversation?
It's such a beautiful, rich conversation, but what I applied to myself and my personal experience is that the generative method helped me to get rid of the fixed mindset and the fixed frames that used to be me. So it's either this way or no way. So it's either my way or the highway. And that always translates in the business and in life into very difficult situations. So what I learned, and I have still applied, and I second what everyone else said about practice, 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 until it becomes part of your daily practice and you don't even think about doing it. So it's basically like, you know, when you wake up and you're brushing your teeth and you're just doing your stuff, you don't even think about it anymore. So it's getting rid of the fixed frames and welcoming the shadow, welcoming the obstacles. And this is something that usually we're not usually used to do. And if I want to go into the cultural aspect of things, since we're an international group, sometimes the culture, we have the norms of the culture that says just put this difficult thing on the side and just tiptoe around it and just forget it. But the generativity method does the thing in a different way. So you open this field and you accept and you're welcoming. And one more thing I'd like to add, which is really different from other methods of coaching. Once we start, I don't really know where we're going to get, and it can change,
Right.
and that's okay.
Right.
And
It's a
this
journey.
yeah, it's a journey, it's not a destination. And this is what's really, sometimes I have a couple of clients that I work with, and sometimes they tend to be very tough on themselves because they've changed the thing. And I'm always opening this space, safe space, that it's okay, it's a journey, it's not a destination. So you can change your mind, you know, it's not like written in stone. And this is the beauty of it. So it's really evolving and it's really flexible.
You know, you're reminding me, I was thinking as you were saying that of some of the psychotherapy outcome research that Scott Miller does. And, you know, he's been looking at for some time, does people's training or training level or type of training or type of method make a difference in terms of the outcomes that they get? And the answer to that, you know, simply is no, it doesn't. There are certain practitioners that get superior results because they get more feedback, they're more sensitive to when things go wrong, and they have a personal practice. But the one group, it's interesting. I'm a licensed psychologist for 50 years. The one group that shows lesser results is people who have been practicing psychologists for over 20 years. and their outcomes start going down. And I think it's because, you know, what you're saying, Haya, is that we get these ideas that this is the way it is. This is the way that you should think about it. This is the way that the therapy or the coaching should be. And, you know, our friend Bill O'Hanlon, who was started out Erickson's gardener, used to say the number one health disease is hardening of the categories.
Hardening of the categories.
Hardening of the categories. And so, you know, the question is, can you trust being fluid? Can you trust being open? And that's why the step one about the generative state is so important, because it gives you a base, a platform, a center underneath the thinking mind.
And also, yeah, base from which you can then actually let go. Because why do we hold that? It's not because we're not trying to be rigid. There's a positive intention there. I noticed, we did want to have a few minutes, and I noticed that Michelle has her hand up. And actually, that's one of the things we wanted to do, is to say, you know, what kind of questions might you have about this? So Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Michelle is from Santa Cruz or thereabouts.
Yes.
Which is where we meet.
Yes, I was wondering if you'd also address a different level of practice, because there's the practice within the 6 steps, but with creativity, one of the elements is getting away from it all and having a practice that allows you to kind of clear the mind in order for illumination to occur.
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
For you, Robert, I know it's running in the morning. With Stephen, it's like playing with his granddaughter and walking. But could you?
I've had a meditation practice every day since I was 14.
That's right.
Yeah, you know, and you know, it's really, thank you for bringing that up, Michelle, because as you say, creativity is about opposites. And Steve brought up this notion before about people procrastinating, or, they go, I'm going to get this done. And then they start, whatever, going on Instagram or whatever. And they go, oh, this is distraction. But actually, it's this thing like you were saying, okay, I got to, if I'm too focused, I'm not getting anywhere. Natalie was talking about getting rid of the cognitive mind. And actually, that's not what we're trying to do. We like I have no problem with a cognitive conscious mind, verbal mind. I've written over 30 books. I'm perfectly happy with it. I just know that there's much, much more than that. And if I'm writing a book, I've actually got to get out of that cognitive mind. And so not get rid of it, but like Natalie was saying, I got to get beyond it somehow, because that's actually where the inspiration is going to come from. And so that could be as simple as going and taking a walk. That could be like listening to music. It could be, breathing. It could just be taking a moment to go into a somatic coach state. So I think there's all these things. We sometimes use the metaphor of, if you breathe out, you're going to have to at some point breathe in. And so
Oh,
you
do
can
we have
practice.
to?
You can practice breathing out, but you've also got to practice breathing in. And so,
Or for that matter, in terms of what you're saying, Michelle, you sort of distance and you go someplace away from the problem. But we would say, to be generative, you have to always have the opposite capacity too. So you have to be able to enter into the very heart of something and access a coach state. I'm thinking here of the work of Bernie Glassman, who was a Zen teacher, developed this, the Order of the Peacemakers. And he does things like, for the last 20 years, Bernie Glassman was Jewish. He was visiting Germany and Poland about 20 years ago. He went into Auschwitz, and something inside of him was shaking, like whatever's happening here is calling you. It's really important. So in his tradition, you find something that's agitating and you go and do a sitting practice in that space. So for 10 days, and they're still doing this every year, you sit in Auschwitz. You started and homeless in New York City, wherever you feel the problem is, you need to have the capacity to go into the heart of it and relax too. And then you sit, and the second is what he calls bear witness. You just notice everything that's coming up.
mindfulness.
And because of that coach state, you're able to sit with it without attacking it, running from it, etc. And then you take all of the different contradictory parts and you weave it together he likes cooking, to make a meal that's healing for yourself and others. So I just wanted to add, you're kind of listening in generative coaching to whatever person is saying. They're pointing in one direction, and you're always thinking, what would happen if we go in the opposite direction at the same time?
So that's part of
it's always
it.
dance between
Yes.
Yeah. And so the center
That's
is something that holds opposites. It's a unitary state beneath conflict and opposites. It's beneath duality.
And we like to say you connect beneath, and then simultaneously you can connect beyond to this other field, right? That's what also helps you to hold it. So I have my center, but I also have this connection to something bigger. That's what we call this field of resources, which is really, can be quite magical. Milton Erickson used to talk very much about the notion of a creative unconscious. It's not something that's coming from me, it's something that's coming to me. And in my own work with strategies of genius, and I think, Michelle, this is also what you're kind of referring to, every genius had some kind of a practice to do exactly what you were talking about. People like Darwin talked about his thinking path. Einstein would go sailing or play the violin. So you have these places where I've got to open to something other than this, directed focus.
And that is getting harder and harder to do in contemporary times. Why?
Yes.
Because of our addiction to machines.
My wife calls them weapons of mass distraction.
That's right, the weapons of mass destruction. But we just want to say, when we take, quote unquote, have a few moments, we're usually turning to these machines. This is not a coach state.
No.
Okay. Well, I'm not saying, we're not saying don't do them. We're saying it's our field is so densely, increasingly packed with static. It makes it harder for us to feel underneath the surface stuff.
Yeah.
But we have to. We have to.
I know that our official time is up. I was thinking we had wanted to also maybe if anyone was to stay another minute or two, we thought it might be nice to give a little taste of this coach state, and that we might just
Yeah.
sort of the four of us trainers just kind of together kind of will pass along and just kind of do what we call a collective coach state. Maybe each of us taking one of the pieces and
Or maybe we could do it like walk through the four-step coach field, intention, obstacle, resources.
yeah, sure.
And so if you need to go, of course you can do that.
I do want to say one thing though. If you do need to go, Kamna has put in the chat, I think, the link, Kamna, to be able to get information about the workshop coming up.
Yes, so I just put the link. If you want to copy it, and I'll
Yeah.
send it out in an email to all of you, along with the recording of this wonderful webinar. It's just amazing how these geniuses can compress such an important technique into 1 hour. And I will, if you write to me and you need discounts of any kind, I am in the privileged position to maybe offer something. So get in touch, please. So yes, that's all I needed to say. Thank you, everyone,
So-
for speaking well. And now
Yeah.
the practice. Yeah.
So maybe I'll open with the coach field, and Hyatt, maybe you can step into intention. Then Robert can step into obstacles, and Natalie, you can have resources save the day.
All right.
Okay, so just as a just a general
everybody, yeah.
fleshing out. So we say before we have a conversation about what you want, we have to chill. So let's start, and you can close your eyes. You need a simple way.
If there's a gesture you want to make or something.
Take a step back. I'm going to step away from my performance self, my everyday busy self. What do I do? What do I say? What do I think? What am I going to eat? What time is it? What am I going to do tomorrow? Take a step back and just remember some of those simple ways where you take a breath, move from thinking, what do I do, to breathing. How can I feel? How can I feel the breath moving through me? Once we do that for a little bit, it opens us to be more receptive to think of a time, think of an experience where you weren't stressed. Where do you go to relax? Where do you go to come back to yourself? That's a question you can kind of drop through your breath, drop through your feelings, say, see what comes up. So when I drop that, I find these images of sitting in my jacuzzi when I'm home at midnight. Great experience. All the tension slowly dissipates, and all these beautiful, beautiful images and feelings come up. I breathe and I think of being in the redwood forest in Santa Cruz where I lived, and maybe that's tuned by being next to the Santa Cruz boy himself, Robert. But I feel the breath. Sense myself hugging the redwood trees and remembering when I press myself into the redwood tree, all my problems disappear. I return to the sense of, okay, well-being. That's how we go into a state where we're ready for creativity. And then, Haya, anything you want to add about step 2, how we would start to attune to a positive intention?
So go inside yourself and see, what would you like to bring into this world? Do you see an image? Do you have a feeling? Does it resonate with you? What would you like to bring into this world?
As you say it, you might ask your body to make a motion, movement that represents that. So you go from the words to the body movement, words to the body movement.
And in generative coaching, we're kind of really getting to these very few succinct words. What I want to most create, I want to be able to express in those what we define simple words.
Then as we do that, often this next part of obstacle.
So as we were saying, as soon as I think, oh yeah, I can easily think, when Haya, asked that question, had us go and ask that question, there was so many things, thinking about what I would like to create and, a greater peace in the world, a greater balance in myself, a greater joyousness in my relationships. And as soon as I think that, all of a sudden, these other things come out like, what, who do you think you are? Or that some of it feels like a weight on my chest or on my shoulders. There's the feeling of, can be a doubt, there can be these voices, and one of the things that's important, that immediately when I begin to hear those, instead of becoming afraid or angry or aggressive, I become curious. One of the things we practice over and over in generative coaching is, when I begin to meet those places, I'm going to say, that's interesting, because I'm sure it makes sense. Something here is needing my attention. It's needing to be held in some way, given a place, to be heard, to be attended to probably be healed in some way, that is, to have resources, new resources brought to it. And so I actually want to say welcome. And that's where I want to say that from that part of what that coach state allows me to do. I can hold that desired state, that intention, and at the same time, I'm making space for this obstacle, because I know that obstacle is there for a reason. There's a positive intention in that obstacle as well. So I'm really bringing new awareness to that in a caring, creative way. And then I am beginning to reach out to resources. And Natalie, I'll pass that to you.
And connected to this space where I'm welcoming the obstacle, I can connect to my resources. What do I need to create that intention and transform that obstacles? It could be a connection to nature, connection to my center, connection to family and friends,
The cat.
My pet.
connection to my cat.
Hmm.
I can add resources, perhaps mentors or heroes, someone who represents really something very important for me, connection to my body, to all parts, to every resources that I need to transform obstacles and to reach my intention, to create the world I want to create.
And when we can hold these three connections to the intention, to our center, to these resources, and then the obstacles begin to shift, to melt, to transform.
One of the integral ways that we do that in the work is keep returning to the coach field. So if you found, for example, when I remembered hugging a redwood tree, or when I remembered swimming in the ocean, or remembered meditating in the garden, that brought me that sense of illuminative, gentle presence. Keep bringing what I want, bring it into the coach field. Feel yourself hugging a tree. Then the obstacle comes up, welcome, and then wrap it into the coach field. So it's just part of this non-muscular, sensual mosaic of intelligence. Then the resources, mix them, wrap them, breathe them into the deeper coach field. So everything becomes part of a beautiful piece of music.
And the intention is always there as my guide, as my North Star. As Haya was saying, and Natalie was saying, it's a journey. It's not there is the journey is the destination, but we're creating it as we go. And the destination is a surprise. The destination emerges from the journey. And so being able to continue to hold center, intention, resources, obstacle.
And you can dance that as a practice. You can dance your center, your coach state, your intention, obstacles, resources, and practice that as a daily practice.
Or if you live in a beach town in the San Diego area, you could say you can surf.
Yeah.
And Haya, if you live in Jordan, you can say,
You can take a walk in the forests. Unfortunately, we don't have a beach.
but you have belly dancing, right?
We can
Haya
dance.
was out in San Diego and she taught our community belly dancing.
Oh, yeah.
And Robert, how about in Paris? How do
Oh
you
my
find
goodness.
that generative surfing?
In Paris, that's there's the food. There's
That's right.
I mean, we also talk a lot in generative coaching about musicality.
Yeah.
There's amazing music. There's so many different. I mean, there's just the beauty of the buildings where you can get lost in the.
Yeah.
And
I
you
was,
can go on a boat
right.
What, Natalie?
and you can go on a boat and
You can go on the boat in the sand.
She's a Paris girl. I was married to a Chinese woman for 7 years. She's our Robert's and my boss, and greatly is dear to me. And first time I brought her through Europe, we finally arrived in Paris, and we went to a lovely French restaurant, and she said, "Oh, finally, Westerners who know how to cook like the Chinese." I said, yeah. What do you mean by that? She said, "Oh, they take all the flavors and they mix them." So that's really
That's aesthetic intelligence.
yes.
Yeah.
And then, Michelle, we want to be able to know that not only in bucolic places, but in the heart of an intense conflict. That's where we really can integrate it. So that's what we're focusing on in generative coaching. What are the principles? What are the methods? What do we need to create in multiple ways? And then how can we integrate it into every aspect of our life, every context? And only then can we really have realized this generativity. In closing, we just say the world needs something like this more than ever. I mean, I don't want to be melodramatic, but we're at a place where we can destroy everything.
And we are kind of already doing that.
That if we don't shift to a more interconnected consciousness and ways of relationship, we're probably not going to last as a species that much longer. Sure. And so what we're really talking about is finding this deeper connection to ourselves and to the world, so that when we engage with the many challenges of life, we don't make things worse. We don't become a destructive influence. but we become agents of creative change and awakening. I sound a little bit Californian, but I think you can all relate to that.
Yeah, and I think just also, as we said, in very, very practical ways. I mean, and Haya and Atil, Haya and Natalie were kind of alluding to this, but these are not just principles that we use only in a coaching framework. I mean, there really is, it's a lifestyle. And for me, all of my life is guided by those principles. And I mean, so it's not just in the context of a coaching session, although I can say also the generative coaching and generative change sort of principles I use and all of the kinds of other work that I do, in consulting, etc. It's not only in coaching. So this is something that is really about getting life skills, right? Life principles that, yes, will immensely support your professional work. It'll take your professional work to another level. You will be able to do what other coaches are unable to do. But it also is something that will take you and your life to another level.
I think maybe that's a good place to call it a night, man.
Okay. Kamna, any final words from you as we wrap up?
Yes, I think you all said so much about generative coaching. All I want to say is the invitation is open. Please come and join us. It starts on the 31st of October. And it's
Stephen and I will
something
be
that
doing the
doesn't.
opening day.
Sorry?
I said Stephen and I will be doing that opening
Yes,
day
you
on the
will meet
31st.
Steve and Robert for the day if you
And
join.
then Layla, you're on, Layla and Natalie are the first module, right?
First group. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the second module, Kamna, is
Dan until.
Dan and Till, Dan Oil from Argentina, who's just an amazing guy. And then the third module is
Judith
Judy.
Delosier and Judith Lowe.
So Judy Delogier is, is a goddess of NLP.
She's
So you're going
Amazing.
I've known
So-
Judy longer. I've known Robert.
She's
So-
amazing.
And then bringing things is
That'll be
Ava
and
and Haya,
Haya.
right?
Eva
So,
and
wow.
Haya will do the fourth module, and at the end of it, on the day after, we are hoping to have a music and dance
Dance.
movement day. to
certification
celebrate
celebration.
Yeah.
Celebration, yes. Day.
So we hope in this brief time we've given you a little bit of taste of what's up in the work, and we extend an invitation for you to become part of it, because it's a wonderful community, and we just realize we need to have communities like this for our own healing, our own presence, but to try to be a positive force in this world that is breaking apart right now.
And there
So-
is a membership of the IAGC attached
That's
to it.
right. So you
And
get
have your
you become
web
you qualify for a member of the IAGC, International Association for Generative Change. You can look at the website to see about that, and also as you can apply for those ICF credits.
Yeah, you will get ICF credits, and you'll become a member of our wonderful WhatsApp group, which it's really active.
That's right.
Steve and Robert are there all the time answering questions. And there is a intent of doing webinars from time to time like this to
Yes.
keep the learning going. So
Okay, everybody. Thank you, Kamna. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody.
Thank you, Haya.
Bye.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Robert. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kamna.
Yeah.
coming. Yes, thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Adios.
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 Au revoir. Au
See you
revoir.
in Paris. Yes, see you in
See you in Paris.
Au revoir.
Paris.
Bye-bye.
Swah.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone.
Bye. Natalie, thank you. Oh, how late is it? It's late, yes?
12:30 or something.
Yes, yes.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good.
Wendy,
to
you are
see you.
coming. I saw you're joining, right?
Yeah, me? Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Kamna. Yes.
Wendy is coming, yes.
Yeah.
Others should join too. Yes, yes.
No, I love your cat. Such a beautiful coach. I felt immediately I saw the cat. I felt yes, in my flow.
Ella, oh, Natalie's cat. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye, guys. Love you.
Bye.
Night.
Right.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Yeah, bye.